Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. Hello. I'm not sure when you're listening to this, but you are listening to the Portsmouth Proud podcast. I'm your host, E. Washington, the Public Information Officer for the Portsmouth Police Department. We serve a community that's not too far from the ocean, not too far from the bay, right on the river. And we are producing this police podcast for you. So you know what's happening in your city. You know the plan, and you know how you can be a part of it.
This is episode 2 of the Portsmouth Proud podcast, and we have a wonderful guest today. We have Ms. Chantal Matthews. She is the Safer Communities Program Manager for Portsmouth United. And we just want to say welcome, Ms. Matthews.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So before we start talking about Portsmouth United, we want to learn a little bit more about you. So can you give us your background? Are you a Portsmouth native, Hampton Roads native? Where are you from?
So I'm a proud Portsmouth native.
Okay, proud Portsmouth native.
Yes. I went to IC Norcom High School.
Okay.
Spent my whole life here.
Okay.
Spent some time in Norfolk at Old Dominion University.
Okay.
So
is that where you went to school?
Yeah, that's where I went to school.
Okay, went to school at ODU.
Yep.
Okay.
I did my bachelor's work and my master's work at ODU.
Okay. What was your undergrad? What was your major?
Sociology with a minor in community health.
Okay, so you always knew that you wanted to work in the nonprofit community field or work?
So not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Things just kind of fell into place, right, as I went. So I did my bachelor's at ODU, was working in housing as a resident assistant.
Okay.
And was trying to figure out, what's next. I'm going to have a bachelor's in sociology. I really don't know what to do with it. Confused about life, and one of my mentors just said, hey, you probably should just go to grad school, get yourself more time to figure it out. And I'm like, I guess that makes sense. And then I ended up, because I was working in student affairs as a resident assistant, ended up doing my master's work in higher education with a focus in student administration.
Okay. So what drew you to sociology?
Just my fascination with how people systems work.
Okay.
How are we socialized to believe certain things and think certain ways? And how does society play with people, right? Is it people influencing our cultures and our systems, or is it media influencing our cultures and our systems? Is it mass thought, or is it independent thought that just happens to create an environment that we live in, or that we function in? Haven't figured out the answer to that.
Okay.
But that fascination is kind of how I got into sociology. I started out as a biology major.
Okay.
I went into ODU I'm going to be pre-med. I'm going to go to medical school. I took a sociology class. It was about pretty much stratification, how are the classes set up,
right?
The middle class, etc. Right? Fell in love with it, and then decided to change my major. I was a junior.
Okay.
My family was upset.
I can see.
I was like, I want to do this. I want to know more about this, and so that's how that ended up happening. It was just one class I just fell in love with. Just looking back, I probably should have just taken more sociology classes.
Okay.
Instead of just changing my major. But yeah, and then I was already focusing in community health.
Okay.
So that minor didn't change. That was always the plan, was to have do some sort of work in community health.
Even when your plan was to be a doctor?
Yeah.
So what was it that drew you to community health? Was it the same thing that drew you to sociology, just interested in systems?
Yeah.
Or
interested in systems and how do the systems work for or against people in regards to their health?
Okay.
What are the underlying factors that impact population health?
Okay.
Essentially. I grew up in Prentice Park, so I grew up in an area that wasn't what we consider the best area.
Okay.
So I was always just fascinated with, why are things the way they are, right? I grew up with some of the brightest people, and not everyone had the same opportunities I had. And primarily my mom just kept me sheltered. She kept me in the house.
Okay.
She kept me just you're going to school, you're going to college, this is what you're going to do, and you don't have a choice. Like, that's pretty much.
Right.
I wonder how different it would be if I had like a different mom, or if there wasn't that structure. Because it wasn't like there weren't, temptations to just do whatever.
Right.
So I just always wondered, like, what are the key things playing roles in how people are able to move up in life, or able to get certain jobs and certain, attain certain accolades, etc. So and health plays a role in that, and I knew that.
Right.
So I just had this fascination with community health, and then I loved people, and I felt like in the health field, you should, have a love for people.
Yeah, you should.
You should, yeah. So I've always had an interest in like population health and what, those things that help us move forward and those underlying things.
So did you see yourself at that point doing something like maybe being a doctor, of course, but eventually going into like policy work, and how is that what the vision was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the vision was to have like a degree in public policy and be like a medical doctor.
Got it.
I felt like that was a way I could really be the change in my individual career, and then have a major role and change widespread. Not knowing all the things that it takes to move policy.
Right.
So that was always kind of like the plan, was to have the community health background no matter what it was I did.
Right.
So that ended up helping me when I graduated from ODU. I was working at TCC as a workforce development, just program coordinator. I was the only person who was kind of doing some of the programs there for community programs specifically. But I wasn't getting kind of the face time I wanted with people. It was a lot of, working with businesses to bring events and programs. And I wasn't necessarily...
You like that one-on-one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't needed at the events. Like, just make sure
that they happen.
That they happen. Look at the contracts. Make sure, making sure when I send things up.
It was
a lot of administration.
Side,
yeah, it was the business side. Yeah. And I was like, okay. I learned a lot. I was able to get some experience, like managing a budget.
Definitely.
I was able to get some experience just learning like what it's like to manage work politics. And I love the people I worked with. I mean, just really family environment. That probably was my first job, feeling like I'm excited to come to work because of the people.
Okay.
But not necessarily because I'm so excited about the work. And long story short, what ended up happening was when I was at ODU, I worked as an RA, and I also worked in health promotion.
Okay.
And health promotion is in college health promotion, you're doing a lot of work around educating students about STDs and drug and alcohol awareness, things like that. And I was like a peer educator when I was a student. The person who I reported to back then was just, ready to move on. She started a business, her and her husband. And so I get a call from her boss when I'm at TCC, and they're like, hey, you should apply for this position. We're going to try to direct hire you. ODU ended up saying we can't direct hire you because of, the way the position was classified.
Right.
So then, long story short, having the background in community health, that experience in health promotion as an undergrad is what kind of gave me the opportunity to serve as the leader for health promotion.
Now, did you get this role after completing your master's program?
Yes. This was after the master's. TCC was after the master's.
Okay.
It started as an internship. I was in a full-blown national job search. I was looking at schools. I was looking at universities to work in the university setting in a health promotion.
You like that?
Office.
Yeah, okay. So we're still in health.
We're still in health, yeah. And because I had some experience in housing, I was looking at housing positions too. Got hired at Arizona State.
Okay.
And yeah, long story short, ODU ended up calling me saying, hey, we want you to work here. Please don't go to Arizona. I said, I don't know, because I still have to apply for this job. And Arizona State already offered, and they gave me pretty much a 2-month window. They let me start 2 months after they offered because it was around the holidays.
Right.
And I wouldn't have enough leave to come home. So I was like, if y'all can get this figured out in 2 months, we'll see. But I think that's really bad for starting my career to be telling someone who hired me, I ain't coming.
Right.
So long story short, I ended up having to take a leap of faith because ODU process took so long. I ended up having a phone interview and was scheduled to start at ASU like 30 days after that phone interview. And I was like, I don't want to give them such late notice.
Right.
Even though I felt like that was bad.
Right.
You know, I felt like this is terrible. They have given me so much grace and letting me start pretty much on my own timeline because it was such a big move. And yeah, I called them. I was crying on the phone. It was so dramatic.
Like, it's okay.
They're like, we understand it's a big move. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm so sad. I was excited to work with your students, but ended up getting the position at ODU.
Okay.
Long story short.
And what was that position?
I was the assistant director for health promotion.
Okay.
So in that role, I just oversaw the health promotion space. I supervised a full-time dietitian, a full-time alcohol, tobacco, other drug health educator.
Okay.
A part-time wellness coordinator, and about 17 student staff that did peer health work.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a lot of supervision.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I was there for 11 years in that position.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
About not halfway through, about 2 years into my tenure there, there was a hiring freeze for the state. So they couldn't hire any positions, even like high level necessary positions. So we had someone leave our women's center. She was the victim advocate. So then they asked me to serve as their victim advocate and I was serving both. I was assistant director for health promotion and the victim advocate, confidential victim advocate for about 3.5 years.
Okay.
So that, a lot of double duty.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting experience.
How long did you have to do that?
3.5 years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then when they posted the position, they asked me pretty much, what do you want to do? And I was kind of burnt out from the victim advocate work, vicarious trauma, a lot of, because I was the only person who could talk to people in the confidential setting.
Right.
Where we only had to send up a report that didn't have names, just pretty much documenting the incident. Everyone else would have to actually document the incident with the names, etc. A student could go to counseling, but they wouldn't be able to get some of the supports they needed going to counseling. Like the way my position was set up, I would meet with the student and I would try to connect them with as many resources as we could while keeping them pretty much need to know. Well, if they needed counseling support, we could, get them there. And if they needed help with the academic part, it's just kind of like a need to know basis.
Right.
So that was a lot.
I'm sure, because it was just
a lot.
Primarily you, because you couldn't hire anybody else, so you were getting Okay.
So it was, and then some students didn't need services at all. They just needed to talk.
Right. And you did this for 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
This portion of it was 3.5 years.
Yeah. So I spent probably the first 2 months of that position getting training. My supervisor, LaWanza Brewington, she was just excellent leader, really. She gave me some space to get some training. I had to be certified as a certified national victim advocate.
Mm-hmm.
That took a little longer than the 2 months, but I had the basic training within that 2 months. Within the 6 months, I was certified, like a basic level certification. So it was a lot of work managing the work of health promotion, which is very student friendly, very open space. We had an excellent team in that space. And then moving over to the Women's Center, still excellent staff, great leadership, but it was just a different type of work. It wasn't that fun, bubbly work I was kind of like used to doing in health promotion.
Right.
And then it was a lot of bouncing between the spaces, needing to sign things in health promotion, needing to, having something that's an emergency and health promotion, and then having something that's truly an emergency
in the victim.
And with the victim advocate work.
And now, is that like a 24-hour thing? Are you on call?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
that would. Yeah.
Yep. So anything related to interpersonal violence, I was on call a month at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So my supervisor was helping with the on-call schedule.
Okay.
But if she was like on vacation or something like that, I might do 2 months, and then she would pick up 2 months.
Got it.
But essentially, it was just to connect people. We partnered with the YWCA.
Okay.
So it pretty much was on call. Very rarely did I have to get up and, respond. It was mostly, hey, this happened. We need follow-up scheduled for the next day. And then I was just pretty much making sure a protocol was followed. Okay, did this happen? Did this happen? Did this happen? Okay, great. Was this person notified? Okay, great. Or no, I'm going to call him. It was like making sure the coordination was happening the way it should. So it may be an hour on the phone, but the YWCA was doing the heavy lift when we had things happen after hours. They were sending someone to campus.
Got it.
And then the next day was, where follow-up had to happen, like as soon as the day started. So yeah, it was an interesting role. What I think was most satisfying about serving as a victim advocate was seeing that student that felt like they would never figure out how to move forward.
Okay.
Seeing them move forward, seeing them say, okay, I was going to leave school, I'm going to stay. Or they left school and then they would, call or email and say, hey, I'm at VCU now, or I'm at here or there now, or I found a job.
Yeah.
And then the domestic violence work was a part of that as well. So,
wow, you had a large scope of.
It was a lot, and stalking was a part of that too. Those were the hardest situations to manage because it was just so hard to pin down. Is this stalking? So a lot of working with our ODU police department for just all of that work. Probably one of my most proud moments was when I first started, there was a young lady who ended up leaving school. She was in a violent relationship, just very hostile situation. He wanted her out of school. He did not want her.
Her partner
wanted her out of, just very, very controlling. Before I left that position, one of the last things I did was help her get back enrolled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was just a very rewarding situation. It took that long, though. Like, it was when I first started. So it might have been anywhere between 3 and 2.5 years.
Right.
Between her really just feeling empowered. And, I was just thankful that she had the opportunity to start over.
Right. And I imagine that that's very rewarding, like you said, to be able to see somebody possibly at their worst, but then to also see them like work their way or get resources and it is them doing the work to get back to what they wanted to do and to start over. It takes courage to start over. I just want to go back a little bit to, you were a resident assistant. How do you feel like that particular role? Because as a resident assistant, you have a job, an on-call job that's all the time. I was a resident assistant in college.
If you knew that. Yeah, I was going to ask. Were you an RA too?
I was an RA. How did that play into your career?
I think it prepared me for a lot.
Okay.
One, writing incident reports.
Yes.
I spent my whole time as a victim advocate having to write
incident reports.
Okay. This is what was said to me. This is what they said when it happened, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so that was a major thing.
Yes.
The writing of incident reports.
Yes. So there's always something going on. In a residence hall. Yes.
I think it also helped me know how to manage multiple things at one time. I don't think I would have been able to manage being in charge of health promotion and being a victim advocate had I not had the experience as a RA, because I was juggling class.
Yes.
I was also working in health promotion.
Okay.
And I was a RA.
Yeah.
And being an RA has like so many different hats. You're having to program.
Yes.
You're having to be on call, write incident reports, do rounds.
Right.
So I think it also gave me
resolve roommate conflicts.
Yes.
Yes.
Sit and listen to people that you're like, this is not reasonable, but I'm going to sit here with you.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I had some really interesting incidents as a RA, and then I served as an assistant hall director while I was in grad school.
Yes.
Because they were able to like cover my housing and cover my meal plan. So I was like, this is the best deal I'm gonna get. So I'm gonna stick around with y'all.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting experience too, because I was the assistant hall director for the apartment living.
Okay.
Which was way different from being an assistant hall director and just a regular residence hall, because these kids are more mature. They're your juniors, your seniors. They're getting ready to live life. They do not want to come to your program.
Not at all.
They do. They do not, and when they have roommate conflicts, they're a little more set in their ways. So they're like, get me out of here, or I'm going to, I'm going to make this bad for all of us.
Right. They've learned the ropes.
They're like, I don't want your mediation.
Right.
I want that person moved.
Right.
Or I'm moving.
Right.
So it's just I learned how to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
In that position. And, it tested my love for people being an RA and being an assistant hall director. It stretched my limits of love, but I think I do love people. So that stuck around, but it shows you like no one's perfect.
Definitely.
We're all managing something.
Yeah.
It taught me how to also balance like leading with love and care and holding people accountable.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to hold people accountable. You have to hold the residents accountable.
Yes. And it helped me with my supervision skills too, because when I was at AHG, I supervised about 10 RAs.
Yeah.
And they were all different personalities, different work ethics.
Yeah. I like that role as an RA too, because you're managing your peers.
That's so true.
And being able to do that and hold your peers accountable.
Yes.
Is a special skill that you learn as an RA. And I wanted to bring that up because a lot of young people don't know about that position and how helpful it is, and how a lot of people's careers start from that RA position. And even if you don't go into like resident housing or student housing on a college campus, how it just helped you in your future career choices and preparing you. I think this is a good time to take our first community break. And when we return, we're going to talk to Miss Matthews about how she made the transition from working for a university to coming here to the police department.
Are you considering a career in law enforcement? Sign on today as a Portsmouth police officer and receive up to $1,500 if you're already Virginia certified. We offer a $1,000 allowance for a bachelor's degree and a $500 allowance for an associate's degree on top of your base pay. Officers can also earn additional income on time spent in court and at community events. Visit our website at portsmouthpd.us for more information on how to apply.
So we are back with Ms. Chantal Matthews. She is the Safer Communities Program Manager for Portsmouth United. And so we were talking about her career prior to coming to Portsmouth United. Now we want to know a little bit what made her make the transition. We know she's a proud Portsmouth native, and Portsmouth United is all about Portsmouth United. So what made you make that transition, or how did you learn about the position?
Yeah, so I actually had been working with a couple of community-based organizations.
Okay.
I went to one of the Chiefs forums.
Got it.
And found out that the position was, posted.
Yeah.
And that it was going to be posted for like 2 more days. I was like, okay. I wasn't job searching. I want to make sure I wasn't like looking to leave ODU. I had been there for so long. very comfortable in the sense that I had rapport with people. Whenever you're at a job for that long, you know the ropes,
Yeah.
So it was very comfortable. So I was like, okay, let me see what this is about. So I just went searching for the position, couldn't find it. That night I went searching, couldn't find it. The next day I was like, let me try again. Found the position, found it posted. Like what I saw.
Okay.
And I had always said, if there ever was a position that made me feel like I would be doing something that's more of a calling than a job,
okay,
I would be interested in leaving ODU. But I had planned to retire from ODU,
yeah.
and
You're already at 11 years.
yeah. I was like, I got, I can stick this out. And I had seen a lot of changes and stuff like that. So I knew I could kind of stick through the changes as the ebbs and flows. But I applied, not really thinking I would hear anything back.
Okay.
I was like, this position, I bet everyone's applying for this position. People who may have done this in other cities. But what made me excited was that it was in Portsmouth.
Got it.
Yeah, and it was about making the city stronger, bringing collaboration to the city and unity.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, let's see what happens. I'll apply. I'll feel bad if I don't. So let me try. And yeah.
So what exactly is Portsmouth United? What's the mission of is it an organization? Is it separate from the police department? What is Portsmouth United?
So Portsmouth United is really the term Portsmouth United came from Chief Jenkins.
Okay.
He went to University of Chicago. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. And they have a community violence intervention lab.
Yes. Okay.
And Portsmouth United was his capstone project.
Got it.
And the point of that capstone was to create a community violence intervention program. And pretty much Portsmouth United is a community violence intervention program.
Okay.
And one of my main roles my main job in this position is to bring together all the community-based orgs, the faith-based orgs, the city departments that are doing community violence intervention work, getting those efforts together, putting those efforts together, and moving a shared agenda forward.
Okay.
So that's what really attracted me to the position.
Right.
I didn't know exactly how it would look or how it would work. It's definitely not easy. It's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Every time I feel like, this is the core group, we get more people added. And that's good.
It is. Yeah.
Because we want everyone who wants to be at the table.
At the table. Right.
So that's really the Portsmouth United is just what it sounds. It's
right.
Uniting our community-based orgs, our citizens, our faith-based orgs, getting everyone united with one shared agenda to move us forward, and reduce crime throughout the city.
And so can you explain a little bit, what is community violence intervention? I know we want our community members to intervene in violence, but what does that look like? How does an organization whose mission is feeding children, how does that work with community violence intervention?
So essentially we know that violence doesn't just happen in a bubble. There's underlying things, right?
Yeah.
That impact occurrences of violence.
Okay.
So a community organization that is like, I'm going to feed people.
Yeah.
They're addressing an underlying cause of violence. Essentially. Community violence intervention, kind of the easiest way to put it is putting the community in charge of I want to say this right. So community violence intervention, the most easy way to kind of capture it is saying violence prevention and intervention isn't just the police department's job. It is the community's job in conjunction with the police department to do this. Because to be honest, the police department would not know all the moving parts, all the moving things that are happening in the community.
Right.
So one of my other jobs is to make sure the community feels empowered to intervene, right? The other aspect is, which is major, is making sure the community feels comfortable with coming here, coming to share things if they need to share things. So a lot of we'll talk a little bit about Peace Week, which is something coming up.
Definitely.
So when we talk about Peace Week, one of the things that's in my mind is how are we engaging the community with the police department during that week? How are we getting some of those barriers down? Now, from my own personal lens, it seems like the police, they're engaging with the community. Portsmouth does a really great job, in my opinion. But I don't know if everyone's feeling that same thing, right?
Right.
So we're going to be working during Peace Week to get our community enhancement division out to some of these events that are already happening. I plan to do this thing called Kona with a cop, like Kona Ice.
Yeah. Kids love Kona.
Yes. I love Kona.
You love Kona.
So
adults love Kona too.
Just really getting those barriers down, like getting people comfortable with, our police officers in the city. They do a great job.
Mm-hmm.
They're people. They have families.
Yeah.
They have feelings. Getting that barrier down so that there is more comfort is also a part of what we're charged with through Safer Communities. So building those positive relationships with the police department is a big part of that too. I think we have an advantage in the city of Portsmouth because we have a chief that understands community violence intervention work.
Right.
And so I think we have our foundation is really solid. We're just building on it.
Okay. If we can go back to when we were talking about the organization that is wanting to they want to feed people,
mm-hmm.
and they are addressing an underlying cause of violence.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about what are some of the underlying causes of violence, so that people can get an understanding? Because I know you'll hear people what does that have to do with crime prevention or
mm-hmm.
intervention? Because they just don't understand how it's all connected.
Mm-hmm. There's several underlying. I'll highlight a few of them.
Okay.
So when you look at someone's ability to their economic development, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a key thing, right? Food insecurity, things like that. So you see these pockets where violence is taking place, these pockets, these spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at those demographics and you see, the income levels are at a certain point.
Right.
So income plays a big role as well. And if there aren't a lot of opportunities, if there's opportunity provision, right? You don't feel like that is something you have, you're going to go to what you know.
Right.
And that's essentially, it's hard kind of to talk about that without getting into public health, because
mm-hmm.
when you talk about health equity, there's underlying causes of, how health equity plays out. There's all these, everything's connected.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the ecosystem, building this ecosystem out. The reason we talk about that is because we want to address all of those things that can create an issue. Housing.
Right.
That's a whole nother one, right? So if I don't feel like I have XYZ opportunities, I may stick to what I know, what I've been seeing, what I've seen, the cycle of violence, because that's what I know. Those are the opportunities that I have. I have the opportunity to do this, so I'm going to do that.
Right.
We have, as a part of Portsmouth United, a crisis stabilization component where we will come alongside families that are victims of gun violence or even domestic violence. And the reason we do that is to break that cycle of violence. Okay,
got it.
This has been happening where you are. We're going to help relocate you. You're going to be paired with, we have a community-based org that does our case management for us, but we also partner with other organizations too. That provide case management, right? So there's a case manager. We want them to have wraparound services as well. And the goal of that is to break that cycle of violence.
Right.
And we're addressing some of those key things, food insecurity. We're addressing the, housing issues. Within that case management, depending on the situation, they're being connected with Portsmouth at Work or the economic development department in the city they're moving to. We're trying to break that cycle. In order to break that cycle, you have to address all those underlying issues.
Right. And so with crisis stabilization, that that particular program, who would that be for? Is that for someone who's witnessed a crime, someone's trying to get away from a domestic violence situation? Who would?
Yes.
Okay.
So anyone that's impacted by violence.
Okay.
What I look for on my end is there a police report, right? Because we have to make sure we are just covering our bases, documenting why we're spending funds for Safer Communities, for the larger Safer Communities program. But anyone who there might be even a threat of violence is essentially, it covers all those bases. Right now, we've stabilized 4 families, all of which have been survivors of gunshot wounds or associated, or the threat, essentially. But that also extends to survivors of domestic violence as well. We just haven't stabilized any families in that situation yet.
Okay.
We are working with Her Shelter as well. We hired an intern who will be working with Her Shelter. So we do hope that we're able to help some families.
So what is the difference between helping a family and stabilizing a family?
Stabilizing a family looks how I was describing. Getting them out of survival mode.
Okay.
That takes time.
Okay.
What I'm learning is people will get into those new spaces. They'll do really, really well. This is just in the last couple months, right?
Right.
There might be a setback, giving them support to try to kind of bounce back from that setback. And, so stabilizing is getting them, my definition anyway, is getting them out of this cycle of just surviving and then beginning to thrive.
Okay.
One of the things I always say when we talk crisis stabilization is we don't want to put people in a situation where they're just continuing that cycle. We want to put them in a situation where they can be successful.
Okay.
Which is why even with our crisis stabilization relocations, I always ask when they say, hey, this is where we want to move. I'm like, Chief, can you tell me if this area is somewhere you would, approve of us, getting them to? Is it going to be okay? Because we want them to we want to break those cycles up the best that we can. And we have violence interrupters, too, that have worked with some of the kids that are involved in these situations to do like mentoring and coaching, helping them get like back in the swing of being in school in this new city. So it's been a lot of moving parts.
I want to touch on the violence interrupters because Portsmouth United is part of a larger program, Safer Communities program. Yes. And so there are a lot of components that are a part of what we say Portsmouth United, but there's things that you have to do as part of the Safer Communities, which is that crisis stabilization is part of that. And so just to recap a little bit, so Portsmouth United offers a crisis stabilization program that helps families go from surviving to thriving. That's the ultimate goal, is to help remove people from a cycle of violence, whether that, like you said, is the actual being a victim of gun violence or the threat of gun violence, but also it can be with the domestic violence. And it's been successful because we haven't, I think you started in October or
September.
September. Mm-hmm. So this program hasn't been here for a year, and we've already got 4 families. As you said, it's a long process. Yeah. You might hear 4 families, but it's wraparound services. It's somebody basically walking through that journey with them to help them be able to thrive. And as we know, like even for some of us who might have not experienced that type of the violent situations, it's hard to thrive in 2020,
It's
in
hard,
2025.
especially if you're not used to how it feels to thrive. And
right.
then there's also, you have to consider there's that trauma.
Yeah.
You know, we all have trauma.
Yeah.
It's not specific, right?
Right.
Like, we all have experienced trauma, but some of us know how to bounce back.
Right.
And some of us just kind of live underneath the guise of that trauma. We don't know how to get back up. Some of us don't even know that it is trauma.
Exactly.
So it's really just addressing some of those things. There's counseling involved.
Yeah.
And all of those 4 families, we're still working with them through our case managers.
Right.
With an organization we work with called Community of Change.
Right.
So it's not hands off. It's like
you're still working with that. Yeah. And I mean, that's important. And I think people know that it takes time. It takes time to end a cycle. It's not instant kind of thing.
Yeah.
But with Portsmouth United, we have the crisis stabilization program. That overall goal of Portsmouth United is to bring all the resources, because Portsmouth has so many community organizations and resources, but getting everyone in one place where you can see what the resources are and find out about them and know about them, so that we can create an ecosystem. Because an ecosystem, everything works together in an ecosystem. It all it's connected, and it's impacting this service, impacts this particular person who impacts this service. But if everybody is like all off doing their own thing, it's a little dysfunctional, and the system is not going to going to work correctly.
It's also, when that ecosystem works properly. Well, I ain't even going to take it to biology, but when the ecosystem works properly, I'm able to benefit from something that's happening over here.
Yeah.
And I think it also helps us properly manage our resources.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if I'm an organization that needs transportation once a week, and this organization has, 2-3 vans, then now I'm able to tap their resources, and they're willing to help.
Yeah.
And I think what's been just a blessing really is being in a room full of people that are on the same page.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out exactly what we're reading sometimes, but we're on that same page figuring it out together.
Yeah.
And that's been just amazing to watch. But I'm gonna let you.
I like that. You're creating an ecosystem, because that doesn't just happen. What I want to say, it naturally is not the word that I'm looking for, but that just doesn't happen. That takes somebody to organize it and to plan it for a community to work optimally.
Yes.
Somebody is orchestrating. There's a systems engineer putting this thing together. So that's important. But you also just mentioned about, what was it? It was violence interrupters, the violence interrupter program. This is something I want you to go in a little bit of detail about. What is a violence interrupter? Because people, they hear about it. Sometimes if you're at the Chiefs forums, our forum, I think one of our violence interrupters might talk about it a little bit, but it's nice for someone from Portsmouth United to tell us, what is a violence interrupter? What is that program, and how does it benefit the community?
Yes. So I want to talk about credible messengers.
Okay.
Real quick. So a violence interrupter, I prefer in our program for our violence interrupters to be also credible messengers.
Okay.
A credible messenger is someone who has had experience in a neighborhood and, had some experience just navigating things in the neighborhood. They may have experienced a loss. They may have been incarcerated before because they were the person perpetuating the violence, right? But what it does is it gives them a platform to relate to people just a little bit easier, a little bit better. And I know that the credible messenger part is what I think people have an issue with the most.
Yeah.
Is, okay, this person who has a background, how are they really going to go and help? But they're going to relate probably better than if I go, you know, because I live in Portsmouth. I've grown up in Portsmouth, but I was sheltered. I don't know left from right sometimes. I'm relying on our violence interrupters to explain certain things to me. There's things I do know, and understand, but sometimes I'm having to rely on their lens.
Yeah.
So I think that part gets gray for some people, right? But our violence interrupters do a lot. They're sometimes at the scene of a crime, helping keep a family calm, helping keep people calm while the police is there doing their job. And they're also, in the weeds. They are able to find out if there's something happening between two people or two groups of people. They may know about it before we even get a whiff of it, and they're able to help mediate those type of situations, right? We are building out our violence interrupter program, and right now we have 2. The goal is to hire 6 additional. Each will be assigned to their own area. They will be providing programming in those spaces.
Okay.
Building rapport with the communities in the spaces they're in, and they will be doing light case management work.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be something different for our program that you don't always see in violence interruption programs. But if someone has a need in the community, or if there is the threat of violence in the community, we'll be able to come alongside those people, stabilize them before it escalates.
Yeah.
But they would be in the weeds to know that.
Right.
So they do a lot of work. Our violence interrupters may call me at 2 a.m. This is where I'm at. I'm trying to talk to the mom, and I'm like, okay, can you send me their information so I can try to see what's needed.
Right.
So they do a lot. They see a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we're going to try to build out, is kind of building in some counseling support for them.
Counseling support for the violence
interrupters.
Okay.
Because sometimes they get to the scene of crimes, they see it.
Yeah.
So not taking for granted that they may need that additional support. So there's a lot of moving parts with violence interruption. We're going to be doing a lot of training with our violence interrupters, bringing in some experts, doing some trauma-informed care training, case management training. I think it's going to be impactful once we can really get a rhythm with that program. I think it's going to help us connect with our communities.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's important I wanted you to talk about that because people don't realize that a lot of community programs, sometimes it feels like it's just goodwill, or somebody comes up with a good idea. But when it comes to law enforcement and it comes with community program, these things are evidence-based.
Yes.
So you wouldn't have a violence interrupter. This isn't just like, oh, we have this idea that we want to do this. This is an evidence-based program. It follows in line with peer support. We know about peer support in a variety of different modalities. They use peer support, and it's very successful because you want to be able to see yourself in the person that's giving you advice or steering you. Because if you have someone who's we use it in a different way. Someone giving you advice about addiction, and that person's never experienced that.
That's a really good example.
It's not going to connect with you. You don't know, as a person who's never experienced an addiction, you don't know the struggles of the person who is going through withdrawals or just has a desire to do whatever it is. You wouldn't necessarily have that experience. And that's the same way when you're talking to kids who are or adults who are in communities that are experiencing a higher level of violence for a variety of different reasons. If you are outside of that space, you don't know the day-to-day struggles that those families are. And even though we said it earlier, we all experience trauma. A lot of us are in positions where we might have we experienced trauma, but we're not under that every single day.
Yes.
You get a reprieve. You have an event, and then you can walk away from it, or it's an event. It's not an every day of struggling with food insecurity. That's an everyday thing. I don't think people realize, like, there's kids who it's a weekly thing. It's an everyday thing. It's when they go home from school over the weekend, they might not have food or something like that. So it's important that you have people that are in the community that are, as you said, credible messengers. They can tell you the pros, they can tell you the cons, and they can talk to you straight, and it's authentic.
Yes.
Because it's their lived experience, and they're not just observers.
Yeah. And it also gives people hope.
Yes.
Because if you have experienced some of the things I've experienced, and you were able to figure out how to thrive, you were able to figure things out and manage, right?
Yeah.
Then that gives me hope. Yeah. I coordinated, oversaw a peer support program when I was at ODU.
Yeah.
And that was one of the main things I would hear from feedback from students is like, okay, I feel like I have a little bit more hope.
Yeah.
Because they were looking at a student who may have experienced something very similar. Now, to us, right, to me, as someone who's 37, a breakup doesn't seem that, extreme at my age, because I've had my share of breakups.
Right.
But to a college student, it was like terrible.
Right.
So they're across from another student who's had the same experience. They're like, well, okay, I might be able to make it out too.
Yes.
Because they did too.
Right. They went through something.
And it gives you common ground.
Yes.
So I think that's why that program is so important. It is evidence-based initiative. It's an evidence-based program. Violence interruption happens throughout the country.
Yes.
And credible messengers are working throughout the country.
Yeah.
So it's not just something that Portsmouth decided to do.
Yeah.
It's an evidence-based program, along with some of the other components of Portsmouth United. Safer Communities, that program was built out so that evidence-based practices were happening in the cities that received these funds. So
there's a science behind it. There's a science, there's studies that are behind it of what's the best practices, how can we be most successful? Because a lot of us, we do want to be benevolent, but just because you have a good idea or you have your desire is to do something that is going to benefit people, there is a best way to go about bringing your desire to fruition. So I think that's important. What are some other things? Are there any other programs? Oh, let's talk about Peace Week. You mentioned Peace Week and how you want our community enhancement division within the police department to go to some of these events. But how did Peace Week come about? Is this a new initiative? Is it being revived? Can you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah. So Peace Week is actually an initiative that one of our community-based orgs leads.
Okay.
And I think this would be the 4th year that Peace Week is taking place, but we're just taking that idea, that initiative, and just making it bigger. They were based in the Cavalier Manor area, so we're going to spread it out throughout the city. There's going to be sports camps taking place. There's going to be a trip to JMU that's happening right before Peace Week. Just so many different things happening just to give our students in the city something to do, a positive thing to do during spring break.
Okay. And so Peace Week, it's happening, that's in April.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's April 12th through the 19th.
April 12th through the 19th. It's geared towards youth. Geared towards students because it's during their week of spring break. And there will be activities and programs for students to do throughout the week, throughout the city.
Yes.
Okay.
The hub will eventually be on the Portsmouth United website for just the list of things that are happening. But so you'll be able to go on that website and kind of see what's being offered. Our community-based organizations are just offering a plethora of things. So the registrations will be on their individual websites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Parks and Rec will have some of the sports camps on their website for registration. And then on that Saturday, that pretty much that last day of Peace Week, we're going to be doing like a major event. We're still building out how that'll look. But we'll have a major event that's going to help bring everyone together. Hopefully it'll be at Festival Park.
Okay.
So we're still working out the logistics for that one, but we'll have a week of events. There's going to be a barbershop talks where pretty much you're pairing like getting haircuts and talking about your feelings. It's going to be a different kind of way
Okay. I like that.
talk things out, hear from our youth, so we can best serve them where they are, meet them where they are. So there's going to be a lot of cool things happening that week.
Okay. And that starts April 12th?
April 12th, yeah.
The week of April 12th. Peace Week, so everyone should make sure they mark their calendars. They're looking on the Portsmouth United website that is coming. You can also learn more about Portsmouth United on the Portsmouth Police Department website, but registration will also be on the participating community organizations' individual website. So you can register for the different camps and programs that they have. It's exciting because we heard about Portsmouth United for some time. So we were, before I started, I had heard about Portsmouth United, and Chief was very excited about it. And so he was very excited when Miss Matthews, when they hired Miss Matthews, and she came on in September, very excited. And just to see the response, because you've had, there's weekly meetings.
Yes.
Every time, I don't know if this is the monthly meeting, but when you had those initial meetings, the auditorium was packed.
Yes.
People are interested. They were looking for this.
Yes.
They were looking for this because we want to, as Chief says, we want to do something great, and we want to do something great in Portsmouth, and we know that we can do great things when we are working together.
Yes.
And so when we're united.
Yes.
Is there anything that you'd like to say to the community about Portsmouth United, or any encouragement that you'd have? Well, let's say this. What would you say to a Portsmouth student on the brink of graduation, how they can make Portsmouth proud?
I love that. I think, that's a loaded question because I have kids in high school. Well, they're my nephews, but they're my kids.
Yes.
I think, it takes a lot to figure things out.
Okay.
But don't take your foot off the brake. Don't take your foot off the gas. Keep going. If you need to figure things out, take a break, pull over to the side, get yourself together, get back out there. Okay. Because you have one time to do this, right? No pressure, but you have one time to do this. Be careful about who you surround yourself with. Have, positive people around you. If you have parents or parent figures that, have your best interest in mind, don't take their word as light. A lot of times parents see things that you don't.
Yeah, that's true.
They may say, "Oh, I don't like that friend." And you may not find out until 2 years from now why they didn't like that friend. But
so
it
true.
might be major.
Yes.
Something major might have to happen for you to see that. And sometimes listening to people who love you will save you from heartaches. But making Portsmouth proud, I think I always advocate for giving back. Giving back may not look like leaving and coming back. It may be, when you come back home to visit, sharing your resources, sharing what you learned with the younger generation. I'm an advocate for come back to your city and make your city better. However you can do that, but that just doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
So just not forgetting where you come from,
right.
and finding ways to give back in a way that works is what make me proud of a student that's graduating. And trying to figure things out. And don't put yourself in a box. College is not for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, find something that is going to work for you. Be smart about your choices. Be smart about who's around you, and, you know, kind of go from there. Know that life offers us all a different set of cards. I say this to my kids all the time. I taught them how to play spades so they wouldn't embarrass me at family cookouts. And I tell them, you know, sometimes you get a hand that is not the best hand.
Right.
But you play that hand.
Right. Right.
You play that
Still got
hand
4 books,
well.
at least.
You
Yeah.
play that hand well. You watch the table and you play that hand well.
Yeah.
And you hope when you get a hand that's bad,
Yes.
that if somebody else, you know, is on that table not doing right, you call them out and you get you some extra books. So just play the hand that you were given well, because there's always someone with a worse hand.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that it was spades too.
Yes.
I like that. Well, it has been a pleasure, Miss Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember that this is your city, this is our city, so let's work together to make it great.